Hi, good evening. I'd like to welcome you to Poem Praise 2, and peace and blessings be upon you and your family this evening. Now, for this evening, we are going to go ahead and get into Lies My Teacher Told Me by James Lowen. Currently, right now, we are on chapter number 3, which is entitled The Truth About the First Thanksgiving. Now, here on Poem Praise 2, this is take 2 of this chapter. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this read that I have for you. And it reads as such. Including mention of the missions the Spanish set up from the Carolinas to the Gulf of Mexico and from San Diego to San Francisco. Within our lifetime, the school-age population of the United States is destined to become majority, minority, with Hispanic, African, Asian, and Native Americans, totaling more than 51%. At that point, probably after much hand-wringing and tooth-gnashing, the history books will give more attention to our Hispanic past, which they always should have done. Meanwhile, the Spanish are seen as intruders, while the British are seen as settlers. Beginning the story in 1620, also amidst the Dutch who were living in what is now Albany by 1614. Indeed, should English be required for proper settling? 1620 is not even the date of the first permanent English settlement. For in 1607, the London Company sent settlers to Jamestown, Virginia. No matter the mythic origin of the country we now know as the United States is at Plymouth Rock in the year 1620. Here is a representative account from the American tradition. After some exploring, the Pilgrims chose the land around Plymouth Harbor for their settlement. Unfortunately, they had arrived in December and were not prepared for the New England winter. However, they were aided by friendly Indians who gave them food and showed them how to grow corn. When warm weather came, the colonists planted, fished, hunted, and prepared themselves for the next winter. After harvesting the first crop, they and their Indian friends celebrated the first Thanksgiving. My students all also remember, that the Pilgrims had been persecuted in England for their religious beliefs. So they had moved to Holland. They sailed on the Mayflower to America and wrote the Mayflower Compact, the forerunners to our Constitution, according to my students. Times were rough until they met Squanto, who taught them how to put a small fish as fertilizer in each little corn hill, ensuring a bountiful harvest. But when I asked my students about the plague, they just stared back at me. What plague? The Black Plague. No, I sighed. That was 3 centuries earlier. The Black Plague does not provide a useful introduction. However, William Langer has written that the black or bubonic, which is in parentheses, plague, was undoubtedly the worst disaster that has ever befallen mankind. In the years 1348 through 1350, it killed perhaps 30% of the population of Europe. Catastrophic as that was, the disease itself compromised only part of the horror. According to Langer, almost everyone in that medieval time interpreted the plague as a punishment by God for human sins, thinking a day of judgment was imminent. Farmers did not plant crops. Many people gave themselves over to alcohol. Civil and economic disruption may have caused as much death as the disease itself. The entire culture of Europe was affected. Fear, death, and guilt became prime artistic motives. Milder plagues, typhus, T-Y-P-H-U-S, I don't know if I said that correctly, y'all, syphilis, and influenza, as well as bubonic, continued to ravage Europe until the end of the 17th century. The warmer parts of Europe, Asia, and Africa have historically been the breeding ground for most human illnesses. Humans involved in tropical regions, tropical diseases evolved alongside them. People moved to cooler climates only with the aid of cultural inventions, clothing, shelter, and fire that help maintain warm temperatures around their bodies. Microbes that live outside their human hosts during part of their life cycle had trouble coping with Northern Europe and Asia. When people migrated to the Americas across the newly drained Bering Strait, if the archaeological consciousness or consensus, on that word, is correct, the changes in climate and physical circumstance threatened even those hardy parasites that had survived the earlier slow migration northward from Africa. These first immigrants entered the Americas through a frigid decontamination chamber. The first settlers in the Western Hemisphere thus probably arrived in a healthier condition than most people on Earth have enjoyed before or since. Many of the diseases that had long shadowed them simply could not survive the journey. Many of the diseases that had long shadowed them. That was just such an interesting sentence to me, because when you think about it, shadowed them, you got to have the sun in order to have a shadow. So it was actually behind them. See how I got a shadow behind me? You can see my shadow due to the fact of the light, right? That had shadowed them simply could not survive the journey. So a journey, going on a journey, there's some things that may not survive due to the fact of the journey that you've taken. Oh my goodness, I don't know, it's a history, but boy, if you just think about that, take that to a whole nother level. If you're traveling somewhere or doing something in your life right now, that was for you. Just to let you know, keep on traveling, keep on going, because there's some things that as you keep on going, it's not going to survive, because it is not going to survive the journey, okay? I don't know, that was for somebody. And I don't know if it wasn't for you. Maybe I'm talking to myself. For real, though. Because, whoo-wee. Thank you, Mr. Lowen, for that sentence in the book. Boy, I tell you, all right, all right, all right. Now, here's the next paragraph, y'all. Let's keep it going. We almost coming up on our 10 minutes. I don't know if we're going to do 10 or 15 today, but let's go ahead and continue right on. Now, neither did some animals survive the trip, okay? People in the Western Hemisphere had no cows, pigs, horses, sheep, goats, or chickens before the arrival of Europeans and Africans after 1492. Many diseases from anthrax to tuberculosis, cholera, I don't know if I said that correctly, cholera, to streptococcus. I'm going to shorten that one up, strep. But I'm going to spell the long word for you because I know I butchered that word. I tore that word up. It's streptococcus. Streptococcus. The next one is ringworm to various poxes, are passed back and forth between humans and livestock. Since early inhabitants of the Western Hemisphere had no livestock, they caught no diseases from them. Europe and Asia were almost made unhealthy by a subtle factor, social density. Organisms that cause disease need a constant supply of new hosts for their own survival. This requirement is now here clearer than in the case of smallpox, which cannot survive outside a living human body. But in its enthusiasm, the organism often kills its host. Thus, the pestilence creates its own predicament. It requires new victims at regular intervals. The various influenza viruses must likewise move on. For if their victims survive, they enjoy a period of immunity, lasting at least a few weeks and sometimes a lifetime. Small-scale societies like the Patute, P-A-T-I-U-T-E, Indians of Nevada, living in isolated nuclear extended families, could and did suffer post-Columbian smallpox epidemics transmitted to them by more urban neighbors, but they could not sustain such an organism over time. Even residents of villages did not experience sufficient social density. Villagers might encounter 300 people each day, but then would usually be the same 300 people. Coming into repeated contact with the same few others does not have the same consequences as meeting new people, either for human culture or for culturing microbes. And that's a good enough point for us to stop here in our second take here on Poem Praise 2. So definitely stay tuned for take number 3 here on Poem Praise 2 of chapter number 3, The Truth About the First Thanksgiving. Now, if you like, certainly hit the like button, share, hit the notification bell, and you'll know when I'm coming with a new read for you from me, Poem Praise 2. But certainly, until then, I want for you to be well, to take care, to be blessed. Be safe too, okay? Now, it beeth thy will. I will speak with you soon. From me to you. It is Poem Praise 2. Until next time. Later, y'all.